You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program, a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew. Welcome to a very special episode of the Write Project podcast. Today, we've got a host of authors on to answer one of the most frequent questions that's asked of any author. We're asking them, do you think having a big ego helps authors or does it hurt them? And today to answer, we have on a variety of different authors. First, Brad Dunn, author of After Dark Vapors.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like probably better to have a big ego than be painfully insecure.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think this is just like true in life, really. Because, you know, the process of writing a novel is going to like chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah.
I don't like whoever you are. If you're going to try and really challenge yourself, you're going to be humbled by the process. If you're not humbled, that means you wrote a really self-indulgent and crappy book. But I feel like it's easier to be brought down than it is to have to build yourself up to that.
Yeah.
Because if you come at it and, you know, you have all these insecurities, you're not sure if you can do it, then that first wall is going to hit you hard. And man, if you can't push yourself through it, then it's going to defeat you. Yeah. Whereas, you know, if you got that big ego and it humbles you and brings you down, at least you have something to work with. But man, if you got to build yourself up, that's tough.
I don't know where I'm at on that. Like, I don't know. You seem like a pretty humble guy. You seem like pretty down to earth. But like, I don't know where I fall on that scale, because on some level, to put out your own stuff, like to honestly say that my imaginings are worth you paying money for and reading takes an ego in and of itself. The fact that any human can say, you should pay to hear what comes out of my head. Yeah. It's better than what comes out of your head. Yeah. Like, that's kind of insane, and it's an insane form of commerce that we've created as humans, where thoughts have monetary value now. But at the same time, like when I'm talking about my work, it's clear I have no ego about it at all. Like, I'm clearly egotistical enough that I've put it out there, but I'm humble enough to go, here you go, it's very bad. I hope you don't like it.
It's a weird, like, megalomania. It's kind of, it's a paradox, because, yeah, like, on the one hand, I feel like you need a lot of, I don't know if it's confidence or, like, you need that dialectic between, like, confidence and insecurity, because I feel like if you were a stable person, you probably wouldn't want to be a writer. No. You'd probably have some sensible, you'd probably be a lawyer or, like, you know, the carpenter or something, but
literally anything.
So on the one hand, it's like, like, you need a bit of that insecurity, a bit of that chip on your shoulder, but also you need that confidence to stick through it and deal with all the hurdles that come along your way.
Fair. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Bridget Canning, author of The Greatest Hits of Wanda James and editor of What's Written in the Ladies. Does having a big ego help writers or hurt writers?
Oh, God. Big ego. I think it can be a real detriment, because I think if you have a big ego, it's going to be very hard for you to accept criticism.
I agree.
And if you can't accept criticism, and how do you improve? How do you take a look at what you have created and try to make it better, or see where you may be lacking? I think most writers are pretty, self-deprecating people. So to me, the two things don't really work well together.
Yeah, that's fair. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have independent author Jeff Kellen. Do you think having a big ego helps authors or hurts them?
Ego?
Yeah.
I don't know if it helps them in the writing as much as in the promotion and the sales. I would say that, ego certainly goes into abeyance for the purposes of writing the book itself, the manuscript, and all that sort of thing. But once you've written down the end and you're satisfied with all the editing and you've got some good professional editing done, and you're satisfied with the manuscript, that's when you start to put on your other hat, if you like. I think there's two sections to it. There's the writer, and then there's the guy trying to sell his book, and that is, you know, a whole different game, requires a whole different skill set, and I think your ego would probably come in there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Tie-On Collective author Susan McDonald. In your opinion, Susan McDonald, does having a big ego help an author, or does it hurt them?
You know, I think you need a big enough ego that allows you to put the words down on paper and let somebody else see them, because that is a huge step, and it takes a great degree of, I think, of self-confidence, because you're so vulnerable when other people read your stuff and critique your stuff, right? But I also, at the same thing, I think you really have to balance it with a fair bit of humility, because most of us are not Hemingway or J.K. Rowling or whoever. I mean, one of my favorite authors is Dick Francis. And if I would give my right arm to be able to write that well. And yet, at the same time, you know, you have to remain humble enough that you do take criticism. Not that you change who you are as a writer when you get the criticism, but that you have to learn from it, and that you have to be humble enough to be open to other possibilities, and that you might have to learn some new techniques that you don't know very well. So I think those kinds of things are really important. But so it's a real balancing act between having a big enough ego to think I can actually do this and to do it, and then having the humility to learn from it.
Okay. No, that's
a sitting on the fence answer, Matthew.
That is the most common, but I find it really interesting that most people equate ego and confidence. You know what I mean? That the confidence thing, you do need confidence to be a writer. You need the confidence to say, this is good enough to put out there and for other people to pay to enjoy. And I'm always, that it ends up becoming a philosophical part, is like, are ego and confidence the same thing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's interesting, because most people say they are, and I tend to agree. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Mary Walsh, author of Crying for the Moon. In your opinion, your varied opinion, does having a big ego help authors, or does it hurt them?
Well, you know, all those authors that I read when I was young, all those women-hating authors, Norman Mailer, etc., having a big ego didn't seem to hurt them at all. You know, all of the 20th century American male authors. But, you know, like people like Kurt Vonnegut, who I loved when I was young, he didn't seem to suffer from an overinflated ego. So, you know, I think it's helped and harmed. It can help and harm, right? It can help you sell your books, I guess, but whether or not it actually helps you touch actual human beings, I'm not sure, you know.
There's a weird logic. I was talking about this with another author that was on, but in some respects, to be an author, you almost have to have an incredible ego, because just the experience of saying, you should pay money for my thoughts, is kind of egotistical. Like,
I suppose, except that, you know, like if you're a big reader and an author and you wait a long time to write, then really I suppose in a way you're right, but to me what I was trying to do, and I didn't manage to do it this time, but I was trying to find myself and the people I knew and my class and my experience in books. Now, I found bits and bobs of myself, and certainly the most I found of our family was in House of Hate, which is a hard thing to say.
Yeah.
But, you know, just that kind of sarcastic, mean kind of family, you know, you don't see that in literature very much, and there they were, you know.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to, there's us. It's like not just me. I don't want just me. I want us, like our crowd, to be, you know, for people to see us, and you know, and then if you don't know anyone like us, I guess maybe it's not, you know, like we tend to Like, how much do we know about the Queen and them, and Donald Trump and the people with money and the people in the middle class? We spend a long time since the 50s, studying the middle class on TV, seeing their mores, learning how you do it. You know what I mean? It's been a great teacher to the working poor, how to be middle class if you've ever managed to get there.
Yep.
But, not since, where are we hearing our voice? Where are we seeing our people? Where are we seeing our experience? So, in a way, too, I think that, you think of people like Michael Crummy, or you think of people like Lisa Moore, it's not just, I feel, I don't know, I've never had the conversation with them, or Joel, they don't just want it to be, they want the voices that they know, they want their experience and their crowd and their people to be seen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have comic author Peter Bro. Do you think having a big ego helps writers or it hurts them?
Hurts them.
Yeah.
I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast a couple of weeks ago, and Diamond Dallas Page was on there promoting his DDPY yoga, and his T-shirt said, "Ego is the death of creatism." And Joe Rogan, wow, that's an awesome shirt. Where do I get one of those? And I that frame, or that whole phrase has stuck in my head ever since. Ego is the death of creatism, right? And I agree. Sometimes I, get a little too full of myself, and then you get a rejection from a publisher, and you're like, I can't believe they rejected me. If they only knew who I was, right?
Yeah.
And that's not true. I got to stay humble, and got to keep creating, and and realizing that I've heard the different stories about when we talked another time about the Isaac Asimov meme, where he says just keep sending it out, and he's turned down too, Isaac Asimov, right? You think, wow. Or Tolkien, wasn't Tolkien turned down a few times?
I don't recall. I know there's a famous story where it took him so long to write Lord of the Rings that some of the staff at his publisher's place had changed, there'd been turnover in the staff. It had been so long. So when he sent in, the head publisher had been waiting for the sequel to The Hobbit all this time and was anxiously waiting. But when he sent it, it just went into the normal, went to the administrative staff. And they looked at it and said, no way, and they'd never heard of The Hobbit before, and tossed it out. And then the publisher kind of went, are you insane? And went and called Tolkien back and was like, no, it's fine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Candace Osmond, best-selling author of Dark Tides and Killer Me. Candace, in your mind, does having a big ego help an author, or does it hurt an author?
I think both. So, and I'll explain why. So having a big ego inwardly, having that confidence in yourself and having that ego for yourself will help you. It will only project you forward and give you that courage to take risks or try something new or that kind of thing. Having an outward big ego where you think you're better than other writers, I can list off 5 big name authors right now, but I won't because I'm not that way. But just off the top of my head, I can already see a few big authors who have huge egos and they're not very nice to their fans online, and they think they're indestructible and they think all their stuff is good, and that's not necessarily the case. And I find I'll shy away from those authors after I see them behave that way. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. It's you don't have to be super nice all the time, but just be nice, be a normal amount.
Yeah. Be a normal amount of nice.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next on the line, we're pleased to have artist and photographer Kit Sora, the visionary artist behind Kit Sora, the Autobiography. Do you think that having a big ego helps artists or hurts artists?
I guess it depends on the person and the ego. I don't think I have a big ego.
I would not say
I think I'm pretty chill, so I'm sort of an outsider looking in on this. If somebody is super confident in their work and they're, confident they're good at what they're doing, I feel like that's pretty good, because confidence is something that I don't have. And I somewhat envy people who, are putting out this incredible stuff, and they know they're putting out this incredible stuff, and they can sort of take that and run with it and get places. I'm second guessing everything that I do every minute of every day. I'm always sort of wondering if people are, loving it or hating it. And while I don't shoot for anybody but myself, sometimes it's sort of hard to separate, stuff that I'm doing for me versus what everybody else is thinking. And it's a weird jumble. So I guess it helps.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to say helps. If you've got a big ego and you don't want it anymore, I'm here. Feel free to share.
Fine line between confidence and ego.
I guess. Yeah. I see. Again, I don't really have one, so I've made it this far on no ego. So.
You're all id.
Yeah.
Not really.
No.
I think you're all ego.
All ego?
Well, no, but I'm switching up terms, because ego, we're talking about it as ego, as in like thinking a lot of yourself and having a lot of confidence, and then I switched it like a meanie to be like id, ego, and super ego, which is like from psychology.
It's above my pay grade.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
It's fine. I'll fake it till they make
It's the different parts of your brain.
I only have one part.
Theoretically.
My brain is just flowers. So
flowers? I like flowers.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have John Hass, author of The Reluctant Barbarian. John Hass, do you find that having a big ego helps or hurts authors?
Well, there's certainly ones with big egos that have done well for themselves, and there's people who are humble who have done well for themselves as well. I personally try to stay humble. I know there's still stuff that I have to learn. I know there's writers who are better than me out there. I know that if I'm paying attention, I can learn from anybody, and I'm not about to ignore that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Gareth Mitten, contributor to About Face and Dystopia from the Rock. Gareth, do you think that having a big ego helps or hurts writers and creatives?
That's a really interesting question. I tend to think that most writers suffer from the opposite affliction of incredible crushing self-doubt.
Yeah.
So I think my answer would be that too much ego is never good in any situation. But I think ego less than confidence. Like, confidence to sit down to write, but also to share what you write with others and get their feedback. People, not just friends and family who are going to say nice things regardless, but people who know what they're talking about. That's really important. And you need to cast ego aside when you're getting the feedback. I think it might have been Stephen King who said, write with the door closed, edit with the door open. I think that was Stephen King. But that's really important to me. I think, writing is kind of a personal experience for me anyway. I want to sit down and I want to develop my ideas and my characters, and then I need other people to tell me if that's something other people want to read, or what structurally is not quite right, or stuff like that. So you need not too much ego in any situation is not good, but you need enough self-confidence not to, again, just to get out of your own way and to write and to share that with others is really important.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's a good answer. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Peter Foote, owner of Fiction First Used Books, the founder of the Genre Writers of Atlantic Canada page, and frequent contributor to the From the Rock anthology. Peter, do you think having a big ego helps an author, or do you think it's harmful?
By and large, harmful. Being confident is one thing, and but being smug, I think really limits a person, not just in writing, but in life themselves. If you think, you know everything. You may not be as receptive to criticism or even new experiences, and broadening yourself, whether it be in writing or life as well. I think an ego, not a deflated ego, but one in
moderation.
Thank you. Big words. Can be an asset, but being self-aware is good, but being arrogant and smug and not demeaning, but high and mighty, can really limit a person and their interactions with their writers, other writers, and their readers. In all honesty, I've seen some very good authors who have interacted with their fans in a way that probably cost them in the long run.
I agree, and I can think of some examples of that as well, both bigger authors and smaller ones, honestly, yeah. I find it's even worse for, not smaller as in like the quantity, but people with less fans, people starting out in their careers, stuff like that. Because at least the larger authors, or the ones that have been around for a while, even when they say something that might be a bit toxic, it might turn me off, it might turn you off, or whoever, but they're going to have that base where you know what I mean, like where there's like, okay, well, the people who are fans of their work are going to forgive
anything,
what they're like personally or something like that. But when you're starting out, your personality is almost your brand. Like, they meet you at the table and they see you and they talk to you, and almost they decide if they like you, they'll try the book. So if you got too much of an ego at the front, it can really hurt you. It can because it can turn people off trying your work.
And no, absolutely, and that's kind of how you and I became buddies, because
I had a huge ego and you hated me.
Absolutely, no. Back would have been HalCon 2014. Ingen had a table. There, I think it was, and that's when you and I first met. We had a great interaction over the table, and I walked away without buying a book, and I didn't clue in until about an hour later. And here's a guy that I chatted with, and he was very supportive and encouraged me to write a short story, finish it, and submit it. And I did, to the very first Sci-Fi on the Rock.
You sure did.
So if you hadn't have been as personable, I likely wouldn't have remembered that interaction or taken the advice. So, no, I agree immensely. How you interact with your fans, even if they're only one person, can really impact your career going forward.
It's a double thing as the publisher, too, because you always got to be, like, encouraging and stuff like that. But yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ali House, author of the Segment Delta Archives series, as well as a frequent contributor to the From the Rock collection of anthologies. Do you think having a big ego helps authors, or do you think it hurts them?
I think you need a healthy amount of ego to be a writer, because you want to be able to put your work out there and to put yourself out there, and you've got to cheerlead yourself. If you have no ego, it's really hard to do that. But on the other hand, you don't want a huge ego, because, you want to be part of the community and you want to learn from other people and think that there's still something else you can be doing. Or if someone points out, this doesn't work as well, you don't want to say, no, I know what's right. I don't care about your feedback. Like, you want to always grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ellen Curtis, who serves on the Wannell board and is the author of the Infinity series from Ingen Books, as well as the editor of the From the Rock anthology. Do you think that having a big ego helps authors or hurts them?
Honestly, I'm just adverse to big egos in general. I think you can definitely suffer from having too much of a self-deprecating attitude, but I can think of a few authors I've encountered over the years who have had big egos, and I have not willingly been in a room with them since.
Yeah, that's happened.
Or read their work, for that matter. I will not willingly pick up their work.
That's true. That is a thing. And it's hard, because when you're an indie author, I mean, when you don't have the marketing talent of a large firm behind you, basically your personality is what makes people decide to read your book or not. Your personality in the cover, basically.
Oh yeah, and it's this tricky tightrope you have to walk. because you can't undersell yourself, but you also can't oversell yourself.
It's a really thin line.
And if you've got confidence, let's say, that's one thing, but arrogance is another, and people will see through that very, very quickly. They might pick up the first book, but they will not come back for the second.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Paul Carberry, author of the Zombies on the Rock series from Engine Books. In your opinion, does having a big ego help an author, or does it hurt? Is it a detriment?
It can depend on what they're trying to do. Having a big ego when you're wrong is very, obviously, it's going to hurt you. But, there's situations if you're trying to market your book and you don't have a big ego, you may not market it correctly because you might be like, yeah, my book's good, but you don't have anything to say. Whereas when you have a big ego, you don't mind bragging about your book, and sometimes you need to do that to make that.
Especially when you don't have the force of a huge publisher's sales force behind you. Sometimes you are the only marketing.
Right. So, but it can hurt and it can hinder depending on the situation. So, big ego, you might think that plot point has to go this way.
Yep.
And someone can say, well, that doesn't work for the story, or that doesn't work for the character, and it can completely ruin the rest of your book.
Actually, that might be a good dividing line. Have a big ego once the book's out and you're trying to sell it, but lose the ego before that when you're editing it, because don't be arguing with
the editor.
Yeah.
I would not argue with Aaron.
Yeah.
Or anyone else that tried to say this, why would that character do that? That is so offbeat from everything else you've built.
Yeah.
And it just throws the story right off.
Yeah, because sometimes as authors, we try to get characters to do what we need them to do instead of what they would do, and it takes a reader or an editor to go, wait now.
No, you wouldn't do that.
Yep. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Aaron Vance, Editor-in-Chief of Engine Books and the editor of the From the Rock anthology series. Okay. In your mind, does having a big ego help an author or hurt them?
I think it might help them start. I think it probably hurts them finishing. Because a big ego, I can write this thing, is really good for someone to start. It's usually the crippling doubt that makes you not start. But then at the end of it, when someone has to go and edit it or critique it, your big ego is probably going to get in the way of you actually making it worthwhile. The book worthwhile.
That's so interesting, because it's actually an expansion on something else, because we've gotten a different answer before, but similar, a before and after type thing. But it might be in 3 stages, but someone has said before that once before the book is published, you need to have no ego whatsoever, because you can't be fighting with your editor, and you were actually brought up you can't fight with Aaron. And then after you're published, you need to market it, so you need to have at least be able to put on the facade of a big ego, but not so much an ego, but as marketing.
I don't think that one is the ego though. I think that's more of not even a sense of pride, but a sense of accomplishment. When you have an ego, it's, I can do this, but a lot of times there's no proof behind it. Yeah. I think at the end of the book, when everything's done, you have to market it, you have proof. So it's not ego so much as it is experience and evidence.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Kenneth Frost, best-selling author of the Immortal Solace series. Next question. Kenneth, does having a big ego help or hurt writers?
I honestly wouldn't know, because I don't have one. I have a horrible case of imposter syndrome. I'm really proud of the books that I write, but I, as an author, do not have a big ego. It's not even big enough that I'm comfortable promoting my own work. Honestly, I would say that it probably helps, because at least on the promotion side of things, I have no idea whether it helps or hurts on the writing side. I can see it being detrimental on that side, but I'm guessing that authors with big egos probably make more money. So, long answer short, I guess it depends on how you define success.
That's fair. Okay, perfect.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.